about that. I had a much darker ending when I wrote the script. And I think I realized while we were shooting the film, the only reason I made it dark was because Night had a dark ending. And I was sort of aware that this was supposed to be not a sequel directly, but a follow-up to that film. So when I was writing the script, I said, okay, everybody has to die. That's just, you know. But when we were shooting it, I fell in love with the characters. And I said, I don't have to kill these people. And I realized that the most important thing to me was that the phenomenon didn't end. You know, it's always disappointing to me. The reason to make a horror film is to sort of upset the apple cart, upset the rules, upset the world. And yet, in most traditional horror films, they set the apple cart back up again in the end. And I realized, well, I can just keep, I don't have to straighten the world out. I can still save these couple of people. And we really did decide during production to do it that way. We actually shot footage of Fran. She was going to kill herself in the chopper legs. And Peter was going to shoot himself. There's that scene with the narrator. And initially in the script, he does shoot himself. And we just decided that. But you know, Dario Argento came in with the first money on that film. And I loved his work and respected him as a filmmaker. And part of the deal, right from day one, was that he would have the right to cut a European version of the film. He said he thought he knew what European audiences would prefer. He thought that he could get more into the head of a European audience. And so he had the right to change the film right from the beginning. So I never really could have any objections to it. In the end, and he and I have talked about this, he cut out too much of the humor. In fact, there were a couple of countries that looked at his version and they wanted to cut, you know, another minute and a half out. And they looked at our US version and just wound up cutting, you know, 15, 20 seconds out of it because the humor, they felt that the humor redeemed it. And so, you know, go figure. So I don't know whether Dario was right in his choices, but he had the right to do it. It was part of the deal from the very beginning. You know, it's funny, questions about Night Riders and whether it was a metaphor for me and my career. And to some extent it was. I mean, I don't consider myself as noble nor as egalitarian as Billy, but it was to some extent that. And that line did come from my Hollywood sort of experiences. So I've only worked out there. I did 2 films for Orion. Creepshow was financed independently, and Warner Bros. Picked it up on a negative pickup. Land of the Dead was also an independent producer that made a deal with us, and then Universal came in after the fact, so I wasn't really making the film for the studio. So I just did the 2 films, Dark Cat and Monkey Shines, for Orion, and had a terrible time. I don't know if any of you have heard some of those stories, but it's just not my... Steve is not heavy-handed in any way, ever. The only time that he ever even got involved in any discussions was he hated the way Vivica Lindfors played the role of, I forget the name, is it Bedelia? I forget what her character's name was. And he just really thought she was way too over the top. And Vivica was very forceful. I wanted to smoke the cigar and be a bit nuts. And Steve always wanted her to just be a more spinstery type. So he and she got into some fights, and she was able to beat him up. But no, Steve and I have always had a really terrific relationship. He's a great guy, very collaborative kind of guy. And so the only things he didn't like were Vivica's performance and the fact that I asked him to, you know, get a little Looney Tunes with Jordy. He also thought Jordy Verrill ought to be a really sad story and not played so broad. But you know, it was never a problem. As far as the cockroaches, man, they literally had their own trailer. They did. We had to have this climate-controlled trailer for the cockroaches. We couldn't buy them. If you buy cockroaches, look online. If you buy them from a laboratory, they're like 50 cents a piece. But when you need, you know, 500,000 cockroaches, the price mounts up.
You should have filmed in New York.
Yeah, we should have. But, so we actually sent these etymologists,
Those bug guys.
Down to Trinidad to get these cockroaches. And they came back with Rubbermaid barrels full of cockroaches, including those big, gigantic ones. But the cockroaches have their own trails. But I'll tell you what, man, you dump out a big Rubbermaid trash bucket of cockroaches, you don't see one in 30 seconds. Within 30 seconds, they're inside something. They were in the computer, in the telephone, gone. You know they're all there, but you don't see them.
They probably still have family on location.
Yeah, the question is about, do Steve King and I have any plans to work together? We still talk to each other all the time. I don't know. Well, I don't know what Steve's doing. I mean, if Steve ever had the idea to come and do something small, I'd say yeah. But I think ever since he had this terrible accident, he got hit by that van. And I think he's sort of taken a different road now. And he's sort of taking as much money as he can for the rights to his stuff. And he's having a hard enough time staying motivated enough to keep cranking out the books. So he's, it's hard to get Steve to sort of come out and play with toys.
Well, he voice cameoed in Diary, though.
Oh, he did that. How many people did that? Yeah.
Right, you guys do your homework.
He'll do something like that, but I don't think he'll ever. Like when we did Creepshow, it was completely independently financed, and Steve came and hung out the whole time. Not just when he was shooting his part, he was there the whole time, and he was just one of the guys, happy to be, sort of playing with the toys. And I just think he's sort of past that right now, and is happy, bought a place in Florida. He's just, he's gotten a little comfortable, and I'm not saying this in any way as a criticism. I don't blame him for that at all, but I think that's just where he's at. Ritzel, I did read, yeah, I did. Yeah. Well, I don't know. The rights were bought to that, and multi-million-dollar sale. I don't know if it'll ever get made. Same with World War Z. I don't know. You keep hearing rumors. Oh yeah, they can finally make it, but then it seems to blow. I've never found it easy to get financing. I mean, I've been lucky enough that I have the kind of reputation that if I'm working within a certain budget, I can probably find a way to raise the money. My partner and I did it a couple of years ago. Yeah, if everybody wants to put your credit cards on the table, we'll make a movie next week. Studios is a different story. I mean, my partner and I did like 5 years out in Hollywood doing development deals, writing scripts and rewriting scripts, and never made a movie. So, I don't think I'm understood. They're a little afraid of me because I don't want to just, take work for the sake of taking work. And I really need to be involved in the stuff that I'm doing. And I just don't like the process and the way it works out there. You never know what movie you're making. And you never know until it previews and then they come at you and ask you to make changes. You still don't know what movie you're working with. So I will remain independent and work with small budgets for as long as I'm still working. No, I didn't. I mean, that was again of a certain time. And I think that when I had to condense Day of the Dead, it was partly a financial consideration. They were willing to, the guys that were financing me were willing to make that script, but they wouldn't let me release it unrated. Because they thought if they were going to invest that much money, it had to have an R rating. And I said, forget about it. I chose to cut it down. And I think the essence of what the long script was survives in the version that we shot. So I really don't want to go back and revisit that necessarily. I mean, there's a little touch of it in Land, but I sort of did that one. And most of those ideas came from they were sort of 80s ideas, and I don't think that they would necessarily work. I mean, there were a lot of challenges, but it was the idea. I wanted to do something about citizen journalism and emerging media, and I immediately got the idea that we should shoot it with subjective account. Then comes the problem of trying to do that on location. There's one shot where they go into Deborah's house that I don't know, it's probably a 2-minute shot, maybe 2.5 minutes, but literally 360 around that entire place. In through the front door, in through the dining room, down through the kitchen, into the garage, back out, and looking down into the living room. A single shot. And it's tough when you're working in a real house. I mean, we had to all move. When the camera's looking that way, we were over here. When it swung around, we all moved. And those are the challenges when you're trying to do subjective camera, particularly when you have a shot that looks 360. So it was. I don't think we realized the kind of trap we were digging for ourselves when we first said, let's do it that way. But it actually became fun. And in a certain sense, it was easier. Like we shot normally, okay, we're going to shoot 2.5 pages today. By the time you make 50 setups, you're just lucky to get out of there before the clock runs down. With that shot, we were able to rehearse it. So you rehearse it 20 times, but you shoot it once. And once you shoot it, you're done. You're home. In fact, we finished early. So there were rewards that came with it that way too. It was great fun. It was really fun to shoot. No, I never thought that they were zombies. I mean, to me, zombies back then in '68, zombies in my mind were still those boys in the Caribbean doing the wet work for
The giant eyes.
So I didn't think these were zombies. And in fact, zombies are not dead. They've been given some cocktail, blowfish powder or something. And they're not dead, they're just sort of enslaved. And maybe suspended animation, maybe just made slaves by some voodoo, depending on what you want to believe. But they're not dead. And so I didn't think these guys were zombies. I thought that these were just undead. The dead were not staying dead. I thought I had sort of a new idea. And it wasn't until people started writing about the film and called them zombies that I said, maybe it's kind of a new kind of zombie. But traditional serpent in the rainbow type zombies are not dead. And my guys are dead. They don't run. Yeah, man, I don't know. I really think it's video games more than films. I mean, there's only been one film, Zombieland, fairly recent, that went through the roof, box office wise. I don't think any of the other films have been big enough to have that huge an effect on pop culture. I think it's video games that have done the trick. And I think that's where the fast-moving zombies came from. And then filmmakers said, well, wait a minute, if they're dead, they really shouldn't be running. So we'll give them a rage virus, we'll just make them extremely pissed off about something. But keep them alive. And, so it's sort of taken this warp into something else. But it's amazing to me. I mean, and I don't quite understand it. I mean, last year, 3,000 people came out for the zombie walk in Toronto. I don't understand. I mean, I truly don't quite get that. What is it? It's just Halloween, an extra Halloween night or cheap costumes? I don't know. I have my guys. If I want to do something that's a little bit of social criticism or political criticism, I have my zombies. I can bring them out of the closet anytime. I don't have a take like on a werewolf thing. I mean, Martin, I had a very specific idea about that. I don't think he is a vampire. I think he's just sort of fucked up.
Like the rest of us.
Yeah, and I don't have an idea for something. I'm not like shying away from it. If I ever had a really good idea, I certainly want to try and do it. It's just that now the sort of mandate on werewolves is you got to do fantastic transformations. You got to spend $20 million just doing the transformations. In order to get financing, it's just too hard. It's too hard to do. Monsters are hard. And in order to get the financing for it, Hollywood really wants it to be, the best Godzilla there ever was. And look what happened to that.
Well, George, on behalf of, as a fan, more than anything, this man has changed my life in so many different ways, Steve. And as a fan, no matter how or whatever I do, I'll always be a fan. And just thank you from the bottom of all our hearts.